Cool, sounds good. So yeah, thanks for joining everyone. Yeah, so this is part of a webinar series that the Gold Board has put together. So for those of you who don't know, the Gold Board, it stands for the graduates of the last decade, and it's just basically a collection of some recent graduates. And then our goal is to help to enhance the relationship between the College of Engineering and Applied Science at CU Boulder, and then its recent graduates, as well as some current students as well. So yeah, we put together this webinar series. It's focused on professional development. So this is actually the third of 3 webinars. So in the first one, we focused on advanced degrees and how those could help your career by going back to school to get like a master's degree or a PhD. Then we focused on professional certifications. So we were talking about, getting a PE or MBA or some other, certification or something that could help advance your career. And we've had panels for both of those events where we were able to ask questions. And this is going to be a similar format here. So we have some panelists who've been kind enough to volunteer their time. And then we have some questions that you all have written up that we can go ahead and I'll pose to the panelists. And then we'll also have some time after that for just some general Q&A. And then depending on how we're doing on time, we also might go into more focused breakout rooms where we have a chance to just kind of work in smaller group settings, introduce ourselves, and then just kind of do some networking as well. So yeah, I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. So panelists, if you don't mind, when I call your name, just go ahead and introduce yourself. We don't need probably like a whole life story, but basically like, where you went to school, what your degree was, maybe your career path, like jobs you've worked, where you're working now, and then kind of where you hope to be ultimately later on in your career. So yeah, I think Chris, Chris, why don't we just go ahead and start with you?
Cool. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Chris Rao. I am a former BS and MS aerospace graduate from CU back in 2018 now. I still live in kind of the greater Denver area up near Boulder, kind of Broomfield area. And I work for Ball Aerospace as a test engineer. So I started off as a systems engineer and then kind of in the same general field, just moved into the test engineering department, working with space vehicles and payload development.
Cool. And I'll add that Chris is also a member of the Gold Board. So yeah, thanks for joining us, Chris. We appreciate it. Okay, Christine, you on the call?
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks, John. I'm Christine Sampson. I am currently an AWS solutions architect with Amazon. I focus on helping startups build in the cloud. And I graduated with a BS in computer science. I was also pre-med and like part of our engineering leadership program at CU. I graduated in 2018. I'm calling in from New York City. Right after college, I moved to Seattle for a bit, and then now I'm in New York. And yeah, where I hope to be somewhere, leading some team, whether that's leadership down the line, senior leadership, or something like that. But nice to all meet you, and looking forward to speaking with you all.
Cool. Thank you, Christine. And Vishvesh, you here?
Yes. So hello, everyone. My name is Vishvesh, and I graduated from CU Boulder with Masters in Electrical Engineering. I joined Micron as an intern, and when I graduated in 2017, Micron offered me a full-time position as a firmware developer. I spent like 3-4 years at Micron, and recently I've joined Intel as a software engineer, and I'm here based in Longmont, Colorado. And hopefully in future also, I would like to be in Colorado. So yeah.
Great, thanks, Vishvesh. So Micron, was that kind of like microprocessors and stuff similar to Intel, or?
Yes, so we are working in both the enterprise SSD, so for data centers, so we provide memory solutions for them. And
okay,
job is more or less the same in both the place, but yeah, a different distinction. So yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Yeah. So yeah, the topic of today's webinar is mentorship and peer relationships. So I know personally, mentorship has been instrumental in my career. Just helping me learn more on the job and kind of prepare for the next promotion or the next step, as well as helping me decide where I want to take my career. I've had some people that are in totally different paths than I've decided to go, that I've had the opportunity to speak with and talk to over the years, and it's been super helpful. I know on my end, and just kind of guiding me And so, yeah, I highly recommend it for, anyone that's, looking for mentorship or is curious about it. And so we have, some questions here that folks have submitted, and I'm just going to go ahead and pose those to the panelists. I think I'll probably just start, I'll just probably ask the question to like one or two of you at a time. And then, if you have something that you really want to add as well and you weren't called on, feel free to jump in. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. I think I'll just kick things off with Chris. So Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about how you've benefited from mentorship in the past?
Yeah. So all the way up, even through prior to coming to CU, I always kind of worked on each step in my progression. I kind of had some sort of mentor, whether that be kind of an informal relationship or more of a formal. And I really kind of started to build on that more once I joined the engineering leadership program at CU. Got kind of my first professional mentor that I've had ever since for about the past 8 years. And, one of the big things that I've learned from mentorship is there's lots of different flavors of mentorship and, different needs for different situations. So if it's looking at, career development and a very specific section of an industry or such, the way I'll approach that mentorship and finding those types of mentors can be very different than if it's just kind of, general career advice of how do I navigate work-life balance? I want to maybe make a move to more of a management role. Something like that is going to be a little different for me and who I talk to, who I look for. But all along my career path so far, my couple of years since graduating and then all through CU, I've very heavily leveraged those mentors to provide kind of insight and really just be a sounding board for myself too, and kind of talking through the different scenarios that I have. So I guess don't want to take up all the time. That's kind of the answer that I would give for that one.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Christine, you want to add to that?
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with, everything Chris said. I think what I would add is I look for mentors in like different buckets. So Chris totally spoke to, a career like mentor and like where you want to go, where do you see yourself at, short term, midterm, long term. And I have mentors for that I've gotten to know, through my career at Amazon so far. And even at CU, I've had a mentor that's helped me figure out, do I want to be, a doctor, or do I want to just go into tech and work there for a few years? I would say, in addition to just career mentors, stylistic mentors. Like there are some stuff, especially if you're looking to be a leader or depending on what you want to do or like how to collaborate with others, like there are some people that I've seeked out mentorship from informally. Just, I want to emulate their leadership style, or I really like the way that they collaborate with others. And it's like figuring out, how do you balance your relationships with other people that you work with, and how do you build up visibility, and get you to where you need to be. So stylistic is one thing I look for as well. And then even, people that I've mentored personally in the past, I think, or even in the past year, even I've learned a lot from them myself. So like a reverse mentor kind of, just because maybe you've been there doesn't mean that you can't learn from others as well. So I think there's a lot of different things to benefit from. And I search for different mentors in different buckets all the time. Those are my 3 main ones.
Gotcha. Thanks. Yeah, I totally agree on like the reverse mentorship side of things too. I think a lot of times just really breaking down like how you do something, or just like having to explain it to someone else, makes you realize like, oh yeah, that is actually how I do that. Or like, that's what has been successful in the past. I never really reflected on it, So I think, yeah, totally agree with you on that. Vishwesh, you want to go ahead and chime in on that question as well?
Yes. Yeah, I always think like mentorship has always been crucial to me. And somewhere, subconsciously and other way, I've always sort of looked for that in my role as a student. And even when I'm working, like when I was a student, I was talking to seniors for basic thing like about course. So there are some information which you can find on the website about the course material, but then there are other things, like how is the professor, how is approaching ease. So those sort of things I used to always sort of, look for. So yeah, it has helped me sort of, in both the case, as a student and right now as a working professional.
Cool, thanks. And I guess, so we talked a little bit about like how it can be helpful to have mentors and how we benefited from it, but how have you, Vishwesh, specifically gone about like seeking these people out or finding them?
Yeah. So one thing which I've realized is finding mentor isn't really easy. So, you have to first, there is a lot of work in the background that needs to go. First, you to find out, what type of mentor you want. Are you looking for a career guidance? Are you looking for a technical help and things like that? So first of all, you have to read about mentor, like what mentor has done and things like that. So you can maybe follow them on the LinkedIn and all and read about them and know that, oh, whether this is the career trajectory, whether I want to go or something that I want to learn from this person. So usually those are the background things which I sort of do. And then, yeah, most probably just go straight to them and you send them an email, be cautious about their time and everything, and sort of ask in that email about what you're looking for and things like that, because that's also one of the other important thing is you should know what you're looking for. It can't be like a vague answer that I'm looking for some random things. So if you can sort of have those answers, so then you can really, if they're not able to help, they can probably guide you to a direction that you can get help. So yeah.
Gotcha. So are you talking about people not just at work or something, but people outside of your industry or something that you're interested in, and you just almost like cold call them kind of with this email?
Yes, yeah. So you have to sort of gauge in that. I never really had too much success, but yeah, sometimes you can really meet few people like using other forums, like like the one which you are in. So that usually gives them a good connection and something to fall back on. So yeah, try to sort of go to events like these, and I'm pretty sure there are also other events like this. So and make a network, because when you have sort of something to fall on, like some even a reference or anything, that really helps. So yeah, some things like these usually help.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, and I should add to that, I think Cameron, we've also been collecting folks LinkedIn's, right, from these meetings. So I think it can also be treated as like a kind of a networking event as well. So I think if people have shared that, and then feel free to reach out to them, and you can continue to have a discussion after this call, and maybe even start a mentorship. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely utilize that. Chris, did you want to add to like ways that you found mentors in the past?
Yeah, I think kind of like what Vishwa said, it can definitely be hard to find folks, and the biggest thing is definitely like you said, going into it knowing what you want out of the relationship, but also knowing that even if you do cold contact somebody or get somebody that maybe you're acquainted with but don't really know well, that first meeting is kind of your chance and their chance to almost interview each other, figure out, are you the right mentor for me, and not feel like you're locked in. A lot of times what I'll do is, especially within my specific industry, I will reach out to folks semi-cold call. I mean, maybe I'll have some sort of relationship to them or some interaction that we share or some commonality. But then oftentimes from that, it's just reaching out and saying, hey, do you have a couple minutes? Do you have 15 minutes to chat, or 30 minutes? Can we go grab a coffee? Kind of get to know them, figure out what their style is. And I have had multiple times where walk out, it's like, yeah, that was a good interaction, but just not really what I'm looking for. So having that willingness to walk away and knowing that you as the mentee, it's really your benefit to figure out what you want, and not have a mentor that's just gonna kind of maybe provide you maybe some useful information, but kind of just take up time on both your ends. So I think that's one of the biggest things is once you find that person, make sure it's what you need, and then kind of go from there.
Got it. Yeah, it sounds like you're saying know your worth. Cool. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on just a little bit. Christine, I'll shoot this one your way. So how have you maintained relationships with your mentors, and how often have you met with them? Has it been kind of a regular thing where you set up a time, or is it like kind of an informal sort of thing over the years, or can you shed some light on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think throughout college, it was more of like, especially with my professors that some of them I viewed as mentors. I would, set up some time with them, especially if I wasn't taking their class that semester, and just, asking them for advice on, just how do you be successful, and how to go about like figuring out what you want to do, in life in general. And I've treated it also based on like their personality as well. Like, and you can kind of tell, like, this gets to what Chris was saying about interviewing people, but you can kind of tell what their method of, preferred communication is. Is it more formal? Is it informal? So even like when I started in industry and then when I started working, like I could get a sense as to like, oh, can I just ping someone and, we can, pre-COVID, like go out for a walk to get a coffee, or, not really having that formality to it. And other times it's like, let's set up this one-on-one, let's actually, you know, have an agenda and everything listed out and doing things. But it really depends on the person and kind of that relationship, I would say, you have with that person and how you treat that and maintain that. I tend to not adjust my behavior based on my mentor, but, you know, speak to their needs because they're giving some time to me, of course, to just chat and give me advice. So the least I could do is, you know, cater what my communication style is to their preferred communication style. Somebody told me, like, at once in a panel that I was actually at for, you know, senior leadership was doing this panel, I think, at work, and someone had mentioned, I don't know if this is true, I'm curious to hear what Vishvesh and Chris think about this, but men sometimes tend to have like more of an informal relationship with each other. Oh, let's go to a ball game, or let's catch this, let's do lunch, or let's do dinner. Whereas women, I feel like tend to approach things more formally, at least even in my experience, that's been my thing. It's more like, oh, hi, you know, I'm seeking X, Y, and Z from you. Can I grab, you know, 5 minutes of your time just to chat? And like, so sorry for the inconvenience. And like, sometimes other people, depending on, you know, not only their personality, but also the gender, sometimes it's like, oh, let's just grab a cup of coffee to chat and let's, you know, hash this out over, you know, going to this ball game. And I think that's really interesting to look at is that something that's prohibiting you or inhibiting you from making these relationships? And if so, don't let it inhibit you, right? Like, try to not be as formal if you don't need to be, especially with mentors that are, you know, earlier in their career or mentors that are a few years ahead of you. I don't see the need to be as formal as much. Whereas, you know, if you're talking to this executive that's high up, maybe, yeah, let's be more formal. So like, know your audience, I guess, but in time, like, build that relationship up and kind of, you know them more too as a person and how they work. And that can inform you as to like, does this motivate me? Does this not motivate me? And figure out, you know, different takeaways from that as you're trying to establish that cadence and build that relationship up.
Gotcha. Thanks. Yeah, those are some really good points. I definitely agree with the kind of keeping it informal thing as well. Like, I found like, if there's anyone I wanted to, you know, either seek mentorship from or just learn more about specifically at work, like, I think everyone's kind of looking for a reason just to go take a quick lap outside or just walk around, you know, and like, you don't even always have to talk about work related stuff, you know, like, you can just be friends and just chat and walk outside. And it's just been, I think that's how I fostered like a lot of my relationships, honestly. Just kind of keeping it casual, and then you just like get to know the other person and you have like more friends and mentors at work. So definitely totally agree with that. See, Vishwas, you want to comment on that briefly? How
Yeah.
you make relationships?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with Christine. And like the part which you said in the beginning is it depends on mentor, like, you know, how frequently they want to meet. And because one thing we even here to realize is when you sort of sign up for a program or something, there is a commitment that goes into it. So like, I have had mentors, you know, I was meeting like once a week, and sometimes, you know, like once every 2 weeks or even once a month. So it all depends on the mentor. And, you know, she rightly mentioned that, you know, once you have sort of that connection already set up, then you can sort of go to, you know, sort of propose that, you know, okay, you can meet outside, go for a walk, or even go out for a drink to know them more on a personal level. Because when you're talking about these, when you're talking in that other scenario, it's mostly work related or something like this. But definitely, you know, if they are sort of up to it, you know, go out with them for a walk or something, then you'll know him personally. And then you can realize that, okay, how long you want to continue this relationship. And yeah, mostly it has all worked for me, and, you know, I've done something or the other. And so, yeah. So,
Cool. Thank you. All right, I'm going to shoot this one Chris's way. Chris, what resources do you have at Ball that help you find mentors? Like, do you have any, you know, sort of programs at work or like clubs that you can join to you know, find people to work with?
Yeah, there's a couple different initiatives that Ball's kind of kicked up. So I mean, some background. Ball Aerospace is part of Ball Corporation. As a whole, there's like 15,000 employees all over the globe. Aerospace itself has about 5,000, almost 6,000 now, just in Colorado. So we've grown a lot, and where it used to be much more like grassroots, just kind of reach out to somebody and connect with them. We're starting to incorporate a little bit more structure, just because it is so big and there's so many new folks. And a couple of things that we've done is try to create, at least for kind of that short-term interaction, kind of the within your job duties, or maybe what you're doing next, trying to find those individuals that can help you from kind of a technical standpoint, or again, just kind of those short-term goals. So there's a couple different programs that we have set up where it's identified kind of like specific mentors and where their expertise are. So whether that be like, if it's a specific type of test operation, or if it's, if you're looking at doing like board design for like PCBs, you might have something like that. And it might be something more like, team building, team cohesion, communication skills, just different little things that you can reach out. It's like, hey, this is the problem I have. Let me go find this person, chat with them. Maybe we can set up a weekly thing for a couple of weeks, kind of get through that problem and then find the next. Outside of that, at least in my experience, I've noticed that more formal long-term programs, it really depends on the individuals that are involved in that program, as well as the mentors. And at Ball, at least, we don't really have a long-term mentorship program set up. That really is back on the mentee to go find those individuals. And as a company, we have a culture that really encourages that and kind of enforces that, creating those connections and establishing those. We've got multiple different resource groups that are, good ways to network and reach out to folks. Things like, young professionals resource groups, or like women's research groups, LGBTA, just different ways to find people that you might connect with. But it's more focused. The structure from kind of a corporation standpoint is really on that short-term immediate needs. And then beyond that, just that culture that kind of encourages that mentorship beyond that immediate need.
Got it. So it sounds like it's kind of on your initiative to continue to, foster more to like a long-term relationship.
Right, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Christine, you want to comment on how it is at AWS?
Yeah, I think at AWS, we have like a good structure, I believe, to onboard people. So any external hire that, was just hired on recently, whether you're an intern, whether you've been in industry for a few years and you're, coming into the company, or whether even if you're like, have a lot of experience in the industry, like 40 years of experience, like no matter what, everyone gets like something we like to call like an onboarding buddy, and then another mentor too. And normally those are like their two main points of contact, aside from their manager and their team and their immediate team, to just help them get to know the culture and help them get to know AWS more. And I think that's what's really cool about Amazon is we're able to align people with different onboarding buddies and those that want to mentor. So normally, someone will put their hand up like, oh, I want to mentor, this next batch of people coming in, or things of that nature. And I think based on that and how that goes, normally these types of mentors are there for the first 60 to 90 days. And then after that, like depending on the relationship with the mentee and if they want to continue it, they of course can. Like normally they meet weekly or bi-weekly, and then sometimes you just settle into a monthly cadence afterwards. At least in my experience, I love mentoring others as well. And so building these personal relationships with these people and expanding your network, kind of John, like what you were saying before, really helps a lot. And I think it's totally dependent up to you if you want to, seek guidance and continue on with this mentor, but at least that's a person you can go to. And as well as there's informal mentorship, like you can always like reach out and cold message somebody halfway around the world if you want, or, I can message somebody in San Francisco that if I'm trying to focus on this, technical area of depth and I want to be an expert in this, I'll message them and be like, hi, do you have like 5 minutes? And then from there, I'll feel out the relationship and then see if we can, build up to like a mentor-mentee relationship. And sometimes it honestly forms organically, aside from, the structural, organizational changes that we have implemented that align people with mentors off the bat. Like normally I see a lot of the different mentor-mentee relationships just form just from going for a walk with people, or people always feel the need to learn from each other and want to learn from each other. And I think that drives a lot of the behavior that's like, let me build my own personal board of directors, or let me build my own mentorship panel, depending on what I want to learn from this person. And I think that's really special about it there.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. And Vishwesh, you want to comment on Intel?
Yes. So I'll talk about both Micron and Intel. And like as I mentioned before, it's not easy to find mentors, and many companies have sort of realized it. And so they will have like some or the other program for mentorship. So like when I was at Micron, there was an ERG, which is basically an employee resource group named Micron Young Professional. And I was a lead for that. And our whole purpose was to sort of organize event for young professionals, like mentorship program, tech talk, and things like that. And then when I joined Intel, obviously had a great experience at Micron. So I was hoping to get something similar, and I did find one. So which is named as like Career Connections here at Intel, where basically mentors will put out information about them, and then mentees sort of can go through them, and the information will be about their career journey and what they are looking to sort of mentor in, like they want to give a career guidance or technical help or things like that. And a mentee, like if I want to seek guidance, they can just go there, and if they find the right match, they can just schedule and like a 15-minute meeting with them through that program. So yeah, usually these sort of programs, and apart from what Christine mentioned, we also have that. And they are, yeah, pretty cool about it, because you can imagine that I was just 1 year into my full-time work, and that's when they made me the lead for that particular site. So yeah, usually these fields are very progressive, and you can find answer if you sort of go out to look for them.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we've talked a bit about forming mentors at work, and then I think you touched on this a bit, Vishvesh, earlier on about cold calling people, like maybe emailing or reaching out on LinkedIn directly. Do you have any like tips or best practices you've kind of learned using that approach?
First, I would say, try to sort of seek for these programs, like, mentorship program or something like this. Because I remember when I was at CU, there was also one which was by Bold in center by there. So use these programs as a reference, because mostly I found my mentors using these. And other thing which I mentioned, that you find some connection, some mutual connection that can sort of introduce you. You will realize that that makes a very different impact rather than directly cold calling that person. So if you can find a mutual contact, that will be even great. And as I mentioned that last time, that be prepared, because as I mentioned, in those 15 minutes you are going to sort of talk about yourself and what you're looking for, and that will basically give an idea to the mentor whether he or she wants to go ahead with it or not. So yeah, usually these are some of the things which I have followed and sort of gotten a success.
And what about company alumni? Like, so since you've moved to Intel, like, have you seen, either coworkers from Intel or Micron going off and doing other things? And have you ever like reached out to one of them and kind of used that common experience as like a way to start the conversation?
Yes, like for example, like I live in Longmont, and there's also a sort of a young professional Longmont group where different companies have sort of gathered together, and there you find a lot of CU alumni, and then you can sort of talk to them to find out more about the companies, because we don't really realize that in this section there are a bunch of companies apart from Intel, Micron. There is Seagate, and many other companies. So you sort of meet professional, and you get to know about what these companies are doing, and whether whether your interest makes an match. So yeah, usually if you sort of seek out, you can find these programs, and then sort of make the best use of it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Christine or Chris, I'll just open up to you guys. Have you had any success kind of with the cold call approach?
Not yet as much, but I think I've seen other people have success with it, and how I would approach it. Really, actually, there is one that I've had success with, and normally I like reached out to them, and I kind of took more a personal approach, really, like kind of, especially if you're in this like a panel like this, or like at a networking event, and someone shares something about themselves or their experience, you can try to use that to hone in on that and say, hey, I really liked what you said about X, or I really resonated with your experience here. Like, it doesn't need to be like oh, you both like basketball, or you both like, to go out to this, this restaurant and eat their food. I mean, it is a little bit of that, but it's also like, hone in on the human experience or the human interaction piece, and say, do you mind if I like pick your brain for 30 minutes? And then from there kind of try to advance it organically. I think with one of mine, that's how I found success. And at least with future ones, that's what I would try to do in cold calling someone, instead of just saying, instead of just keeping it super formal and saying, I just want this from you. Do you have like 30 minutes to spare, kind of thing?
Gotcha. Thank you. Chris, anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of going off that too, that's where kind of my experience with cold calling has happened, where I see like a keynote speaker or somebody at a conference or an event, and something about that, whatever they're presenting or talking through kind of resonates with an interest of mine. And usually when I reach out, I'll kind of mention that of, hey, this is, you mentioned this during your presentation, whether that's personal, like what Christine said, or if it's, maybe something more the career path they've taken or where they're from, and that's something that I resonate with. And that typically does work out better because, again, if you're just reaching out to somebody, they have, especially if they don't know you, they have no vested interest necessarily in helping you, and you don't know if they're even open to being, a mentor or not. So just kind of opening up that way, it's like, hey, I'd love to hear more about what you've done. More people are willing to kind of talk about what they've done and their experiences than they might be to jump on like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do a formal networking thing with you. So kind of going that route, starting it more informal, again, kind of gauging it. If it works, then you can kind of jump into it a little bit more. And if not, then maybe you made a nice network and a good connection that you can keep down the road.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think, and I'm guilty of this too, but like people definitely enjoy talking about themselves, I think. And so if you can just kind of pose a couple of questions where they get a chance just to explain like their career, what they've done, or maybe something that they're proud of, like I think that's definitely like a good way to kind of get your foot in the door with someone versus just like basically reaching out and asking for something personally. I think like a lot of times, like I'll see stuff like that too, where sometimes people reach out to me and it just like comes off a little just not right when someone's basically just like immediately asking for like a recommendation or like they want this from me. It's like I think definitely kind of get to know the person first or just make an effort to, and I think that usually leads to like much more successful mentor mentee relationship. I'll keep it on you, Chris. So have you with respect to volunteer opportunities, have any of those led to any mentorship relationships or valuable relationships?
Yeah, in my case, most of the volunteer opportunity, how those have kind of spun out is I'll get mentees myself. So most of the time when it's working with students at CU or even things within industry that are kind of doing outreach or even for young professionals, I've had a couple times now where after going through and whether it might be like a panel session like this or like a resume review or something. And then kind of like what I was saying about how I've cold called people, like somebody has resonated with something that I mentioned or that we were talking through. And I've had them reach out after the fact. Sometimes it's on the spot, they'll mention, hey, really enjoyed the conversation. Can we continue this? Other times it'll be down the road. I'll have somebody that finds me on LinkedIn, a couple months later, and I'll just get a message from them. It's like, hey, we connected at this event. It was really interesting and I'd really love to meet up again. So that's mostly been my experience is connecting on me being the mentor and having a mentee out of one of those events.
Gotcha. You're a sought after guy, Chris. Christine, anything to add there?
Not much to add. I think I have the same experience as Chris, whether it's at one of these events or sometimes we do like new hire events for trying to recruit people onto different teams, or even just talking about the SA role, because at least my role isn't really is unique. It's not standard for somebody. Normally, like I see people like, oh, I want a software engineering type role, and they have no idea what an SA was, and I didn't even know what an SA was. And sometimes I connect with a lot of students or different people out there that's like thinking the same thing, like what other kind of tech career roles are there? And then we get into this really good conversation, or sometimes they will message me, kind of like what Chris said, on LinkedIn and saying, hey, can I steal 30 minutes of your time? And from there we can build it up. And same with at work stuff. I would say, especially this past year, we've done a lot of hiring, and I was able to mentor a ton of people coming from an external source, and they've either, asked me, hey, I heard you were a good person to talk to about X. Can I borrow some of your time to chat? or they'll reach out with a personal anecdote or something like that, which, like Chris said, people do like to talk about themselves. And I think, getting me to talk helps build that mentor-mentee relationship. But yeah, I think just going to conferences and networking, I think networking is a big piece that helps with this. Like, you never know in the future, it is a small world out there, whose paths you're going to cross. So even if you're not looking for a mentor or a mentee, to begin with, keep them in mind, and you can always, circle back at a later date and connect with them later.
Totally. Yeah, I definitely agree. It's a very small world. Like, I actually had a mentee that I was talking to for a little while last fall, and then she just like sent me a message on like our internal, like through the company directory the other day, and she's like, hey, like, I'm working at your company now, and it's just like, it's just crazy how that stuff ends up working out, and like how, it's still pretty early on in my career, but I imagine like, down the road, just the frequency of events like that occurring will probably increase too. So yeah, let's keep it going. So Bishvesh, let's see. Let's say that you were looking to pivot your career. So maybe, you're starting out as like a technical contributor in engineering, and you're looking to pivot maybe to management, or just do something completely differently. Where would you recommend going to find like a mentor who could advise you in that career pivot?
Yes. So one of the first thing would be whether it's in the same company or not. So if in case I'm in Intel and I have a choice, so I'll rather find somebody who's at Intel and sort of gone through a similar process, so that they can guide me about like what to expect, because obviously these two roles are like very different. And once at outside, everything looks really nice and shiny and everything, but when you sort of talk to somebody who's in that field or has gone through it, they'll give you the real things. And usually they always start with the bad stuff first, and then they sort of go to the good stuff. So yeah, usually I'll probably do that. And then I have like some of the people like professors and all those people there who have really guided me, and they're like my close contacts. So then I can sort of discuss with them whether this move is feasible or not. Like, okay, from technical to manager is very straightforward, but if I have to sort of switch industry, like right now I'm in storage, if I have to go to like something like an Amazon or something, so then I can sort of have that conversation about, okay, what is the prospects, and is what do they think about it, because obviously other people are more experienced. I'll find those people who are more experienced and what they have sort of seen in the industries and how they gauged it based on their experience. So yeah, I usually try to find somebody who I know first, and then maybe look out for somebody to gain more idea about the process and stuff. So yeah, that's how I will go.
Okay, thanks. And Chris, I think I understand that you made a transition kind of in your job scope, right? Like over the years, was someone helping you out with that as well?
Yeah, so when I started at Ball, I started as a systems engineer, kind of working more on documentation side, more kind of customer focused, and then I transitioned into a test role, which is much more hardware focused. And in that transitions, I kind of knew where I wanted to go. So I already knew that was kind of the path I wanted to go into. But even just trying to figure out, how do you navigate that within the company? How do you make that transition? Is it easy to make that transition? If I jump over to test, can I get back to system fairly easily, or what does that career path look like? So I reached it a lot, both internal to Ball. I had a couple folks. There's a lot of CU alumni there, and I already knew quite a few folks working there. So I was able to kind of reach out to them, kind of figure out just general structure of how can you move within the company? What does that look like? What are the pros and cons of making those moves, especially early in your career? Does that change anything? But then I also leveraged a couple of the mentors that I had actually all through my time at CU as well, and helped me kind of figure out early on where I even wanted to go. I kind of reached out to them too and just tried to gauge, what type of, more than just role A versus role B. It's like, what should I be considering between different roles, between different positions? What are the things that really should be considered? And I will say, especially for early career, it can be difficult to figure out, especially depending on what postings look like or what type of information is out there, what the role really entails, and if it's the right choice based on where you are in your career path. So one really good example is, if you're getting right out of college and you've got a whole bunch of offers, maybe a couple of those have a really high salary point and others are in a really desirable location, or some have a really, really good perks. Trying to figure out, what do you prioritize? How do you weigh all those? If one place, especially if you've got, a lot of variation, if you're on, East Coast, West Coast, middle of the country, you've got a large discrepancy in salary ranges and such. How do you pick, and especially if they're all different positions, how do you pick those, which one is more important? How do you weight those different aspects? So that's something I've always done, is find somebody that knows the role I'm going to go into, figure out what the technical details of that specific role look like, so I kind of have an understanding, and then talk to kind of my well-established mentors about what types of things should be considering, making sure that I'm asking the right questions and I'm taking those to people that can help answer those.
Gotcha. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, super valuable. Okay, so I have one more. This is kind of the last of our final of our canned questions before I open it up just to the audience for some Q&A. But this one deals with rejection. So have any of you three experienced being rejected or turned down when someone asks you to be a mentor or a mentee, rather?
I mean, I have, as you can see, right, my intention has always been to sort of find mentors and things like that. And sometimes you will meet somebody who is, I mean, it's not really a rejection. It's basically because, as I mentioned, right, before, that it requires a time commitment, all those things. And, there is a nurturement, and then there is a bunch of things that is involved. And sometimes some of the people who sort of I seek for are like super busy in their work, and they have a bunch of things they're going in their personal life. So usually they will come to you and say that, okay, right now at this point and that stage in career, they don't really have time. So that's why they can't really sort of move ahead with it and things like that. So yeah, that's like part and parcel of this thing. So it wasn't really heartbreaking, but yeah, they've sort of explained their case. So it's usually fine, but yeah, most of the time you will find somebody or the other. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, so that's kind of it for all the questions we had prepared. So I think audience members, if there's anything you wanted to ask either to the panel as a whole or to someone specific, feel free to pipe up now. I'll check the chat as well, see if there's anything there.
I had a question that I started typing out, but I couldn't type fast enough, so I just unmuted. Are any of you a part of a professional network? And have you used that to further your career, I guess?
Yeah, I'm involved with a couple different professional networks. Actually, my longtime mentor, she's a member of SWE, Society of Women Engineers, which I'm also a part of and was kind of active with in the latter half of my time at CU. And that she was kind of the instrumental role of helping me kind of figure out where I wanted to go coming out of CU. And actually, since then, a couple of the folks that I met during going to some of the annual conferences and some of the local conferences, I've been able to keep in touch with either at different companies in similar industries or even at Ball. I met several folks on the corporate side who have now moved over to Aerospace. And I actually met them at a local SWE conference. Didn't know they were part of Ball till we all sat down at the same table, started chatting. And then 6 months later, I saw them walking in the hall in my building and kind of made the connection. Other than that, I haven't had any other specific kind of connections that I've used to kind of jump around, but again, early in my career, and I think utilizing those professional networks, especially if you're looking to maybe pivot to different industries or different companies, or you have to make a move, having that network can really make that transition easier. Just having more people to work with and those connections and such.
Cool, thanks, Chris. Anyone want to add to that? Yeah, so I think with that, we're pretty much out of time, guys. So I just want to thank you all for joining. Especially, big thank you to the people that sat on the panel. It was great to hear from you all.